You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
You're listening to Making Tracks Reaction Chat, breaking down the latest in Star Wars programming. Here are your hosts, Mark Mulcaster and Mark Newbold.
Hello and welcome to Making Tracks Reaction Chat, brought to you by those ruffians over at FanthaTracks.com. This is our first watch through and chat and review of chapters 3 and 4 of Maul Shadowlord, which is entitled Whispers in the Unknown, chapter 3, which is directed by Stuart Lee and written by Julia Copperman, and chapter 4, Pride and Vengeance, which is written by Amanda Rose Muniz and directed by Nate Villanova. So, as always, this is a spoiler-filled episode review. So if you haven't seen any of chapters 3 and 4 or any of Maul, then go on to Disney Plus, hit play, catch up, and then come back and join us because we wouldn't want to ruin it. So we left off with Devon escaping her cell from Maul's hideout, and we've got Lawson who's still in trying to track down the connections between the various gangsters and this shadowy figure that they saw in a holo recording and has been told that it's restricted by the ISB. So that means that it feels more like a continuation rather than necessarily like episodic contained stories. So this flows very nicely from one episode or one chapter into another, and that's exactly where this is going to work really well if you get a chance to kind of binge the first few episodes.
Yeah, it does feel like certainly the first 4 episodes you could quite happily sit and binge together. As you say, the start of the 3rd episode, you see her getting out of the cell. Vario's quite confused. How did you do that? Why aren't you getting me out, sort of thing? And pretty quickly, as she starts to make her way out, she comes across Maul doing a little, like a tea ceremony almost. His lightsaber's right there. And it's just what we were talking about last week about, you know, the effects of his words and the power of his words, how he can seduce, he can explain things in a way that makes it not seem, you know, a fraction of as bad as it actually is. She knows of Maul. She's either been taught by Doki or she's learned it. I mean, we're not that far beyond. I mean, she's mid-teens. I think she's probably a bit older than Ahsoka would have been. So she was probably
trying. Known Ahsoka.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. And she would have been at the Jedi Temple training with everybody else. So she's probably been taught lessons about Maul. You know, the Clone Wars was 3 years. The events of Phantom Menace was 10 years before that, with 13, 14 years past Maul being, you know, chopped in half sort of thing. So she would know of him, which she clearly does because she says his name. Him saying, you only know what you've been told. You only know from a certain point of view. She only has the patience to listen to so much because let's not forget, it doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter how clued up you are, you're still a teenager, and hormones are hormones. And sometimes you react too quickly to things. And she reacts too quickly. She goes for the saber. She grabs the saber. The light goes out. It's Gollum and Bilbo. It's, you know, it's that whole thing. The interchange between the two is really interesting. I really enjoyed that sequence.
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about the whole conversation, and I think actually this chapter especially, the stuff with Lawson is the B plot, is the kind of stuff that's just going to tick along in the background. But the stuff that I found most interesting was that conversation really between Maul and Devon. You've got Maul who's offering to help complete the Jedi's training, whilst also asking her for help against a shared enemy. So he's not being altruistic, he's kind of being strategic by that. He's thinking, well, I'll give you something, and then in return, you help me back. He isn't really that aware that maybe, or isn't necessarily too bothered by Doki, as it were. We had that instance in chapter 2 where the two do confront each other, don't they?
Yeah.
On the bridge, and then Maul causes that distraction by knocking the other Skywalk down and stuff, which is
it's a great sequence. Yeah,
pretty OP for what we've seen of Maul up to this point. But I think it just goes again to show like how his powers have kind of developed.
It was like a Force Unleashed power move, ironically, wasn't it?
Ironically, it kind of was. You do that with Superman, you knock out a bridge, man, and then he's got to go save a school bus because there's 30 souls there as opposed to rescuing Lois Lane. So, because like Maul operates on a very different philosophy to the Jedi. Jedi, they value the discipline and the selflessness, whereas like Maul kind of seems to value like the power and the survival and control. His offer serves multiple purposes for him. You know, obviously it's a temporary ally, but also with helping complete the training, he's got the influence to give a different perspective on the Force, one which is more emotional, more aggressive, more survival driven. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? He's kind of playing on this weakness of like, hey, you guys were in the temple, part of the Jedi Order, and you didn't need to want for anything because it was A, provided, and B, you didn't have any attachments. But now, galaxy's a whole different place. Is that, when you actually take away the Jedi Order and this era of lawlessness where the Empire hasn't completely got a chokehold on every single star system, it means that like more of these criminal syndicates can gain power. He's trying to kind of show her, on one level, be seen as being her friend. When she sits down, he's like, how's your arm? Sam Witwer's brilliant in that real calm, subtle, soft, seductive tone.
Yeah.
Means you have to lean in to listen, but also like you think she will be leaning in anyway. It's interesting because he's positioning himself as both partner and teacher and master and everything. So it's a very interesting power dynamic.
But he's also doing something that I think will bear fruit later on. And it's something that he says that really caught my ear was, as a Jedi, your enemy is now the Empire. The Emperor turned the Republic, turned it inside out, turned it into an empire. And the ones that didn't get you when it was still a Republic are after you now. So that you are enemies of the Empire. The Empire is my enemy as well, because my master turned me away, wouldn't have me back, tries to kill me. I'm an enemy of the Empire. You're an enemy of the Empire. We're on the same side. We're both fighting against the same thing. That's such a twist of the truth. But actually, if you wanted to distill it right down to the bones of it, you could say, well, actually, yeah, he's not wrong, is he? That's his angle to try and seduce again, because she's a teenager. She's obviously savvy and smart and clever and blah, blah, blah. But she's still a kid who hasn't seen much of the galaxy. She's still fairly fresh to it all. A year out of the temple, let's say, if it's a year after Clone Wars, then a year ago she was at the temple training with her masters, and all these legends are here, there and everywhere. And okay, the war's going on. The war probably kicked off. She's 14, 15. I don't know her exact age, but let's say she's mid-teens. The war probably kicked off when she was 10 or 11. Well, Ahsoka was 10 or 11 when the Clone Wars kicked off. So you're right. They're probably contemporaries, because there wasn't that many Jedi around at that particular point. So I love the thought that she's being lured in by this whole line.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
It's quite hard to kind of get a read on her, actually. Is she self-aware enough to lean into gain his trust to escape, or is it just purely just a case of like, actually, I'm quite tempted by this?
Yeah, it does feel like there could be an element of temptation, because you certainly see when they start clashing, she gets the saber, he pops the other half of the saber out, and they start to go at it. And he does the Vader and Empire thing, fighting one-handed.
Yeah.
Quite arrogantly. But arrogance in the sense that he knows he can do it. He's light years above her level at this point. He's toying with her. Yeah. She's giving it everything, and she's getting annoyed and angry. You can see there, that's the tell. That's what he's going to exploit. She gets really angry.
Yeah, she's getting frustrated, and that's what he wants. He wants an emotional response. Because once you have that emotional response, it seems like these Jedi seem to open up a lot easier to more emotional response, because suddenly they've become more aware of the extra power that they've had to restrain themselves from, that they can then, no pun intended, unleash.
Absolutely. You go back to Phantom Menace, where he kills Qui-Gon, doesn't even spare him another look. He just turns to look at Obi-Wan, and he knows what's coming. He knows Obi-Wan's coming in hot, because Ben's only early 20s at this point. You have 10 seconds of, still in my opinion, the best lightsaber fight we've ever had. That fight on Naboo is phenomenal. But Ben can't sustain it, because even though he's angry, it's an emotional angry, and it's almost like the endorphins drain. And then you literally see Ben tying up as he's trying to finish Maul off. He's not on Maul's level quite at that point. It's only because Ben is so ingenious and smart with the discarded saber of Qui-Gon that Maul doesn't see that coming. But in a one-on-one fight, Ben's just clinging onto a little, whatever that greebly thing is on the side of the drop,
Kind of random light, isn't it?
A random light, let's call it that. And so he's hanging on the random light and does the pull up, gets the saber, chops Maul in half. Goodbye, Maul. Hello, Sam Witwer. It's just interesting that, and we've not seen a huge amount of Maul in that sense, in that scenario, luring somebody in scenario. The point is that he has identified that kind of emotional vulnerability. And I think that moment with Devon, when she starts getting angry, is like, oh, hang on, he's going for that.
Near the end of chapter 2, Lawson goes to what I think it's like the entertainment district, and he meets up with Rena Sull. very much like a nightclub owner, very much clued into like the underworld and stuff
Definitely,
like that.
yeah.
And that's where he gets a lot of his intel for who this Shadow Collective is and who this guy is, who Maul is and all that. So then like we jumped through to chapter 3 and the police are still making their inquiries, they're still checking like quadrants and then like you have like Two Boots who kind of goes off. Two Boots is what, again, it's like that moral kind of center. He's like, you've got a match to go to, you've got to go to your son's. Well, it's Dave Filoni, right? So it's got to be some kind of hockey game.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually they didn't show more of it. So you kind of then have the like, the two partners go off. He goes to the game and watches some of the game, and then obviously gets called away because Two Boots from that gets attacked by Rookcast and the other guys who were there to take down the Pikes, Matt.
The Pikes have turned up. I mean, it's Docky that kind of comes along, isn't it? And has that little conversation with him at the sports arena. And yes. I'm glad actually in that moment that his son does see him and they acknowledge each other. And he says, they're keeping a seat for you. No, I'm okay down here. His son kind of knows then that he ain't going to stick around for the whole thing. But at least he sees him score a goal.
Yeah, I think really this is the first time, other than Skeleton Crew, family life in Star Wars is such a weird thing. It doesn't really get covered at all. But actually, people have jobs and they have kids, and their kids have to go to football, soccer practice, or hockey and go to hockey games and stuff. And it's like, how
Space
do you
hockey.
reconcile between Space hockey? Yeah, I'm sure they'll come up with a cool name for it. I'm sure Pablo's worked on it already.
Certainly.
It'll be in the visual dictionary, won't it?
If they play it on Mon Calamari, they would call it Squidditch.
Nice. I was trying because I was thinking of Quidditch. I was thinking, what clever Star Wars version of that could it be? Squidditch. I tip my hat to you. That's legend. He gets called away basically to pick up Two Boots, and that's when we start to actually get a little bit more like backstory, a little bit more exposition as to like the whole relationship with Lawson and his reluctance to get the Empire involved. You have that conversation with Docky and Lawson's, look, if we get the Empire involved, I don't think we're ever going to leave. And I get the feeling that you're not a fan of the Empire yourself. Docky's, he's quite savvy. He's not, even though he stood next to the guy and basically kept a bridge up in the previous chapter, but he hasn't kind of said, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a Jedi. He hasn't been that forthcoming. We then get this conversation with Two Boots where Two Boots tells us really about his ex-wife and all that, who is a member of the Empire. So did the Empire, because the initial assumption is that Lawson works loads, so therefore his marriage broke down because he works loads. But maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was actually the Empire and the fact that his wife is working for the Empire or gets conscripted by the Empire, and that's where their marriage fails, which I thought was an interesting twist on it.
It feels like maybe the obvious thing is when that stepping forward to the end of chapter 4, but the Empire do arrive because Two Boots does call them. Is she the commander of that Star Destroyer? Or is she a bridge technician? Or does she work in HR? What's her level of involvement in the Empire? I think the cliched thing would be for her to be the commander of the ship.
Yeah,
I'm kind of hoping it's
Captain Lawson. Yeah.
That's it. I'm hoping it's not that.
I'm hoping she's like Karen Lawson from HR, from Imperial
exactly.
HR department. Sorry, cross.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Or some other department. Because if she's full bore, full on, like make the galaxy great again type character. That would fit. I don't know, I haven't seen it yet, so it might be the case that it's amazing, but it might feel like a bit of a cliche. Whereas if she's there thinking, she heard the speech that Sidious gave to the galaxy about what the Jedi did, and she takes that on good faith because she knows no different. And maybe she was one of those members of the Republic that would have naturally transferred to becoming a member of the Empire because it was a name change, essentially. They changed the skin on it, but it's the same sort of thing because it had been changed from within and it was ready to go from birth. So maybe she's one of those kind of Imperials. It's not as linear as you think. It's not as one note as you think. It can't be. There's so many different types of people within the Empire.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what kind of Imperial she is because they're not all Nazis. It's not how it works.
Exactly.
Especially at this point, especially a year after.
Yeah, exactly. The year after, you'd think everybody, for one level or another, will be very kind of like, this is going to be good. This is going to be great. Like you said, this is like make the galaxy great again for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And then obviously it's how those shift. But for every single career officer like Grand Moff Tarkin, you've got like the Dead Ramiros, and then you're going to probably have like Mrs. Lawson, who's soldiers and that they get married and that, be it male or female, and they get deployed. One day they're in like Odium, and then the next time they're out in Kandahar or something like that. It's just kind of the nature of
part of the job.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
already Lawson's really reticent to call in the Empire. I mean, I don't get the sense that it's because he wants to take the win. He wants to get the win. He wants to bring this guy down by himself, own himself for his own career. I think he's thinking of the wider potential, and it might even be by something that his wife has told him, that he's gleaned that actually, hang on a sec, if we get the Empire here to Janix, that is not going to be a good thing for the planet.
And it's a bit like stepping forward best part of 20 years to Andor, when on Morlana 1, the Empire come in, they go, right, we're taking this over. You guys don't know what you're doing. Those other fellas who've just been quietly doing their local police work are essentially out of a job now. That whole structure, that whole system is gone, because the Empire will come in and go, right, well, this guy's now in charge. I don't care if you've been on a career path for 30 years. This guy's now in charge. He's just at the academy. He's an expert. So jog on. And all the structure that's been built, cultivated in a society is gone, because the Empire just wants a monoculture and they just want everything the same everywhere, because it's just easier, isn't it? So It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. Also interesting to see will be how the whole situation with the Pikes plays out, because Vario is now getting involved. I mean, he hasn't really got a lot of choice, but he is a talker, so he's now dealing with the Pikes, making out like this shipment that went down that Two Boots was at. I will recompense you for all the losses. I'll make sure everything's okay.
Because he blames it on, was it disgruntled rogue lieutenants from the last guys?
Yeah, the guy he shot.
Yeah, but like you said, it's kind of like he's gone, well, yeah, I'll cough up it just to show good faith, just to prove that I'm still kind of loyal and you can still trust me. And that. Then when you cut to the opening prologue of Chapter 4, what's quite interesting is that Vario goes to Obadiah to meet Krim and his cadre and that. The shipment comes down. You think Maul's going to take on the cadre. So then Vario sees an opportunity, gets out the world's smallest blaster, and then stuns Maul. And you go, well, that's typical kind of double cross, isn't it? Classic Underworld. You're everyone's friend, an ally, and an enemy, but really you can only rely on yourself. And then it transpires that actually Maul's 20 steps ahead and is like, no, we're putting a decoy. That's how he takes off the head of the Pikes. About who is currently, at that point, Krim was kind of currently controlling what was left of the Shadow Collective. The one thing that stood out to me across these 4 chapters that we've seen is just how well they've handled the violence. Let's be fair. I mean, I like a lot of violence and I like gratuitous violence, but obviously very much aware that, this kind of has to sit in the Disney sphere and also has to be fairly accessible for a number of different ages. And I thought what they've done really well is show quite gritty violence, but in a way that isn't explicit. They cut just at the right time, so you kind of get the sense that somebody's just about to get by it with a couple of lightsabers and stuff, but then cuts away and you cuts maybe to the exterior and stuff, and you hear blaster bolts and stuff. So I think they've been really savvy as to how they can get this brutality across without necessarily showing it.
The sound effects are amazing. You mentioned David Collins with Spybot. The sound is phenomenal. So the sound is really heavy. I mean, Maul's blade always sounded the throb and the thrum to it. I mean, Kylo Ren's was like that, dialed up even more, but I think Maul's was the one that really had that to it,
home.
And also I think they've added visual elements of some of the sword fights from Visions. There's some real sort of expressive, almost the afterglow of the blade as it moves through the air. They've really sort of dialed that up in a very good way. Visions is great because it's, I think, as much about the style as the substance. That's why I like Visions.
100%, yeah.
It's meant to look gorgeous. And so Visions does that great. But I think what Shadow Lord is doing so far is just taking that, and it's not doing it at 100% because it wouldn't fit. It'd be too over the top. But it's probably doing it at 50%. There's just elements of that just look really fantastic. And there's a sequence, we get to it in a bit, where Maul and Docky go at it, and Maul clearly gets the better of Docky. He's an older Jedi. We know how the Force is balanced at this point. It's definitely not in the favour of the light side. So he's fighting at a disadvantage. But there's a scene where their blades are just clashed together, and just the light off the blades, and you see Maul's face. And Docky was a brilliant shot.
That whole last third, really, when the police kind of descend on, they get the location from Docky. Docky kind of sends it through to Lawson as a tip from an uncle. They all go there. Devon and Docky are waiting with the police. She, again, is impatient. She's like, we can take these guys now. The police arrive, and Vario's waiting for him, and then Maul offers some kind of like a truce, doesn't he? He kind of says, well, look, let's stop this now, and I tell you what, if we call it quits, and you just leave me alone, then I won't up your planet.
Yeah, just let me have Janix.
Exactly. To which Lawson's got principles and is like, no, that's not really going to work. When we finally get Devon and Docky take on Maul, that was good. I mean, Maul is clearly take both of them easily, but he's still obviously trying to get Devon to turn.
And he's not going to turn her by killing a master in front of him.
No, exactly. What I like is he's kind of pushing one to one side and then kind of tackling the other and that. So he's not having to fight them both at the same time. But then what I do like, actually, and that probably shows a more savviness of Doki and the experience, is that he goes for his legs.
Yeah.
And he damages one of Maul's legs. That's a cute thing, because actually, up to that point, there's not really been any mention or reference to the fact that Maul's got robotic legs. I thought that was quite nice. So they've done it in a story way rather than just in a really naff kind of exposition way, just to remind us all of Phantom Menace.
Again, it goes back to the procedural thing that you mentioned last week with Lawson and the tip-off. It's classic cop procedural type stuff. Huggy Bear in Starsky and Hutch was the guy that was giving those guys the tips. You know, you're often seeing Lawson in his speed and whizzing around the city. So there's lots of coppish elements in there, which is great. But this sequence, Lawson has to contend with, not only is he having to constantly stand 2 boots down, don't call the Empire, I've got this. And he actually switches 2 boots off. But then later on, when they meet up again, and then I shouldn't have shut you off. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. It's fine, I understand. But you're not going to like this. Somebody turned me back on, carried on doing what I was going to do anyway.
Chief Kleiss comes over to Lawson when he's out, the equivalent of the pinboard, like you'd get in like SVU and Chicago PD and stuff, and kind of say, look, he went over your head, and so I've kind of put him on desk duty, which is cool, because normally they would probably get a slap on the wrist and that'll be it. So the fact that actually 2 boots first gets repowered up and then continues to make the call, even though he's already been shut down by the chief, is quite interesting, because that's probably worse than actually just not involving the Empire. That's disregarding like standard procedure for local police, and also it goes against your partner. You're betraying your partner.
But it'd be interesting to see how they spin that, because Lawson's the one that's holding off, isn't he? And 2 boots is the one following the procedure. And even Kleiss was like, she almost wants to bring the Empire in at one point, and obviously Boots gets put on desk duty, as you said, because there's been the clash between the two, and if anyone's going to cop for it, it's going to be the droid. That's how it read to me.
Yeah, well, he's also probably the subordinate as well, really. Yeah. When you power a droid down like that, that's, I suppose you say, like invasive kind of thing to do. I know you see Han do it in Empire to see 3PO. When it comes to droid etiquette, actually just powering down a droid like that without the say-so, when they kind of have like their own autonomy.
I think that was definitely an apology moment for Branda.
Yeah, exactly. He knows that he's overstepped mark, but then 2 boots doesn't. I still want to know why 2 boots wears like a pair of boots. I just don't know. I mean, it's just like, it seems such a random thing. Like, I mean, I'm hoping that it gets explained in the comic. I mean, I know it's because, like, what is it TBOTS or something? Is his designation or something? That's what his designation is. Come on, it's Star Wars. It's kind of cute, but okay. I don't quite understand why he needs to wear footwear, but hell, just let him get on with it, I suppose. So basically, the hammer is coming down, and I will never get tired of seeing a Star Destroyer in atmosphere over a planet. It doesn't matter how many times you watch Rogue One when it's just hovering over Jeddah, and in this case over Janix, it just looks freaking cool. And it always reminds me of just how big these Star Destroyers are. But then at that point, it's like, this is when I think the story is really going to get interesting, because it's suddenly, we've gone from this very procedural, good cop, baddie, dancing around each other, but then suddenly now we've got the Empire coming in, which is a different kind of force, as it were. The only people who are going to really be able to take on Maul, other than Vader, is going to be Inquisitors. And I kind of don't see, obviously, Vader coming into this. I mean, I'd love to see Vader versus Maul. I think that then would tip the balance as to how we perceive Vader. Whereas actually, if you chuck a couple of Inquisitors, I don't know, the 34th brother and the 18th sister or something, and it doesn't really matter if they get dispatched, because a couple of numbers, isn't it? But again, it will elevate Maul's prowess and his deadliness. So next week, it's going to be halfway through this fantastic series already, which is bonkers to me.
Now, I'm very much looking forward to next week's. Getting 2 episodes a week is actually very good. I think that works quite nicely, even though I'm always happy to have 1 a week, stretch it out. But, we've got Mando and Grogu coming pretty fast.
Okay, just purely as a viewer. And I mean, I'd quite happily, and for us doing the show, it'd be even easier if 1 episode a week came out. Do you think maybe rather than doing 2 episodes in one day, maybe they could stagger it so you do 2 episodes a week, but it's on a Monday and a Wednesday?
I would, yeah.
That would work it better?
Big time. I think that's a cracking idea. Yeah, if they did 1 on a Monday, 1 on a Thursday, Monday would get you through the week, Thursday would get you through the weekend. I personally agree. I think that would be really cool.
Anyhow, I think probably a good time to wrap this up. So we will be back next week with another episode of Reaction Chat. We'll be back before that with Making Tracks. As always, we welcome all your comments, thoughts and theories and feedback on this show or anything. And in fact, even me and Mark, feedback to us as well. You're welcome to do it. You can send it to us via our own personal Instagrams. Mine's Mark_base81 and Newbold says prefect_timing. Do that on Instagram. Or you could email Fantha Tracks directly. And to do that, Newbold is going to tell you how you can get in touch.
Exactly all of that that Mark just said, and this is how you can get in touch.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show Good Morning Tatooine goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And amazingly, that's me done for this episode, Mark.
And that is me done for it as well. It's been 4 action-packed good episodes so far, so I really can't wait to see what happens with the rest of this season. So join me next week for another episode of Making Tracks Reaction Chat, and until then, stay safe, take care, may the force be with you, and don't let the double-ended lightsabers get ya.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.